Today I'm going to talk about the asexual reproduction. First, what is it? It is a kind of reproduction in which a new organism is produced from a single parent without the involvement of gametes. We have to remember that without the involvement of gametes. Normally, it is of different types, and five of them are very important. First, fission. Second, budding. Third, fragmentation and regeneration; fourth, sporulation; and fifth, vegetative propagation. Now let's talk about the fission. What is fission? It is an asexual reproduction. Actually, fission is of two types, but I want to tell you about first what is fission. It is an asexual reproduction in which a mother organism splits up into two or more than two daughter organisms. It is of two types. Number one, binary fission. Number two, multiple fission. Now let's talk about them one by one. What is binary fission? It is a type of fission in which a single cell organism splits up into two new organisms of nearly equal sized. We can take example also, just for example. When amoeba cell reaches to maximum size of growth, then first the nucleus of amoeba elongates. This way elongation takes place. In second diagram, it is elongated nucleus elongates and divides into two parts and forms two nuclei. After this, constriction appears in the middle part of the amoeba. Here constriction is shown, which becomes deeper and deeper and divides cytoplasm, and lastly single mother amoeba divides into two daughter amoeba. Look at these two daughter amoeba. This is the procedure of binary fission. Now next we are talking about multiple fission. It is a kind of fission in which a single-celled mother organism splits up into many new organisms at the same time. In previous case, into two, but here into many organisms. Just for example, we can take one example. It's a very common example. This is the example of Plasmodium. This is a Plasmodium cell. In particular unfavorable condition, a protective wall called cyst forms around the single-celled organism like Plasmodium. Look at this is cyst, which is thicker, and cell is completely surrounded by the cyst. The nucleus of cell lying inside the cyst then splits off several times. So many times it splits off. And what happens? And forms many smaller daughter nuclei. Here it is. Many daughter nuclei are formed, or daughter cells are. A little amount of cytoplasm collects around each of the daughter nuclei, and thin membrane forms around each of them, which gives rise to many tiny Plasmodium cells. Here it is in third figure. Many tiny Plasmodium cells. When the favorable condition comes, then the cyst breaks. This is the thick cyst. It breaks, and cyst breaks, and many daughter cells present in the cyst are released. Each of them, or each of the daughter cell, develops to a new organism. This way multiple fission takes place. Okay, let's go to another, budding. Exactly what is the meaning of budding? It is a kind of asexual reproduction in which a small part of the body of the parent organisms grows up as a bud, which then detaches and becomes a new organism. It occurs in Hydra, yeast, etc. Look at this. This is an example of budding in Hydra. What is shown? At first, a small outgrowth forms on the side of the body of the hydra. Look at this is the small outgrowth, which is written as bud. The bud then grows gradually to form a small hydra by the repeated mitotic cell division. Mouth and tentacles develops at the top, and lastly a tiny hydra detaches from the body of parent and develops to new organism. This way it forms. Now let's talk about the body. Again, We can talk about this yeast also. In case of yeast also, at first bud appears outside the cell wall of yeast cell. At first, a bud appears outside the cell wall of the yeast cell. Now the nucleus of the parent cell divides into two parts. This nucleus divides into two parts, and one of the nuclei enters into newly developed bud. Then the bud nipped off from the parent cell. Here it is shown at the upper side. Bud nipped off from the parent cell. This way, a new organism formed and acts as a new yeast cell. Usually budding is so fast that the first bud starts to form second bud before the separation, and second bud starts to form third bud before the separation. So they form chain of yeast cells. Look at this second part, the lower side. I have shown this. This is the chain of yeast cells. Later all of them separate from each other and acts as individual organism. This is the example of budding in what? Yeast cell. Now let's talk about fragmentation and regeneration. The process of breaking up of multicellular organism into two or more parts of its own is called fragmentation, which grows to form a new organism. This is called regeneration. This is mature hydra, and it is cut down into different pieces. I have made just 3 different pieces. This process of forming fragments is called fragmentation, and each of the fragments then grows and develops to a new hydra. This way fragmentation and regeneration takes place in hydra. In the same way, this is the example of planaria. In planaria also, a mature planaria divides into different fragments, and each of the fragments then develops to a new organism. This is fragmentation and regeneration process. Now next is sporulation. Exactly what is sporulation? It is a kind of asexual reproduction in which a plant grows from a spore. This process is related with plant only. And I'm showing a diagram of mucor for this. At first, round bulb-like structure develops at the top of erect hyphae. These are the round-shaped bulb-like structure, and this round bulb-like shape is called sporangium. And this sporangium, after the formation of sporangium, inside the sporangia, nucleus divides several times. Each of the nucleus and a bit of cytoplasm combine to form many reproductive units called spores. In favorable condition, I mean to say in temperature, as correct temperature and humidity, sporangium burst and spore spread out from this sporangium. And this way sporulation takes place. Okay, now next is vegetative propagation. It is a kind of asexual reproduction in which new plants are obtained from root, leaf, or stem of the old plant without the help of any reproductive organ. Vegetative propagation is many types. In another class, I'll talk about vegetative propagation in detail. These are the major types of or modes of reproduction. Okay, this much for today.